Hi folks, corner rounding end mills. Let's show how to use these tools. Let's talk about where you can purchase them, how to set them up, how to program them, some CAD and CAM, and just overall usage tips to get the results you're looking for. Welcome to another Wednesday Widget. There seems to be a decent amount of fear about using corner rounding end mills. And to be fair, they can be tricky to use. The reason is that we're asking that tool to do so much more than a traditional cutting tool. For example, if we're facing this part across the top, we're just asking it to cut along a flat profile and in one dimension. Likewise, a traditional end mill, we're asking it to, say, clean up, adaptive, or finish this sidewall. Now, fun fact, most of us, when we do something like machine and finish a sidewall, we don't necessarily realize or even care about the fact that there may be a slight amount of taper along that line. If you have any friends who are, say, aerospace machinists, go ask them. Say, hey, how do you deal with taper on long sidewalls or parts where you're doing significant amounts of webbing and material removal? It'd be interesting to see what they say. But that's part of what makes a corner rounder tricky. We've got a 2mm radius right here, and if we want to machine that with a tool, that tool has to be perfect along the top of our part. It has to be perfect at the tangency point. It has to be perfect radius, perfect again at the tangency point, and then perfect along your sidewall. And we have to measure the tool perfectly with both correct Z height and minimal run out so that we can move that tool along and machine this face here without a burr or problematic blend line as it meets these two other faces. So how do we make that a little easier? First off, if possible, stack the deck in your favor by letting the tool that you may have on hand drive your feature size. In other words, let's say you have a 1/8 inch radius tool. Well, see if you can adjust your CAD file to match that existing tool. These tools can be expensive, and as you learn a specific tool from a specific manufacturer, you'll get a little bit better at it. So it's a rare case where we want to try to let the tools that we own or we like drive our CAD model. Normally it's the other way around. Normally we have a CAD model and that dictates the tooling that we use. On that note, like most modern carbide toolings, they come with various coating styles. Coatings can be amazing things for helping with tool life, especially more exotic materials. But generally speaking, unless I have a production or really application-specific use, I prefer to own tools like corner rounders and other specialty tools uncoated because it lets me use them on any material. So how do we model up the tool in Fusion? We'll go to Tool Library, add a new tool. Under type, it'll be a radius mill, and we'll pick this 1/8 inch corner rounder from Lakeshore. Shank diameter is 3/8 of an inch. It's a 1/8 inch radius, but the pilot diameter, and that is the diameter of this center tit, is 0.93 or 3/32. Shaft diameter point, it was 3/8. Diameter of the tit was, I'm going to type in 3/32. Corner radius 0.125. No tip length, that would be what extends beyond the tip. Normally that should be 0. Body length we'll just say is 1/2 inch. And then the shoulder length and the flute length are both 0.125. So we've got that tool modeled up. Now, one of the things that makes these tools so difficult to use is reconciling the accuracy of the tool as well as your ability to measure that tool. So again, we measure the height of that tool by touching off on the face of the tool. That would be this surface right here. And what that means is that the distance between the face of the tool that we're measuring and the top of the cutting edge is incredibly important. And a human fingernail can easily pick up 1/1000th of an inch difference here. And here's the bad news, and probably the reason that corner rounders have a reputation of being difficult to use. The actual dimension of this tool isn't always going to match the published dimension. So how do you fix that? Well, two different ways. Number one, if you have access to something like a tool presetter, an optical comparator, or a measuring microscope, you can measure this offhand or prior to using the tool and get a much better idea for how accurate the tool is. Absent that, your best bet is to walk the tool in. In other words, let's assume that the tool is incorrect and we're going to walk it in. And we can do that by staying off these two faces. So when we go to Program, we'll pick a 2D contour. We'll pick our tool as this 2mm. I'm going to left click once on this line. Now I want this full contour selected. It's one of the few workflows I really don't like in Fusion that I wish they would improve. You could keep clicking around, but that's going to be adding multiple chains. It should just be one chain. So left click once on the line that we want. Now left click on that line again and let up on your mouse. You'll see this new thing pop up. I'm going to orbit over to here, not using my space mouse. Click right here. It's a little bit hard to see. The original line that I clicked was blue. The piece that I added is black, ending in blue here. Click the green plus to accept that new selection. And now we've got a single chain that represents the full profile that I want. Click OK. Simulate that tool. By the way, left click and drag left to right on your screen, and you can slow simulate as you want, kind of scrubbing through it. What that's going to do is a quote-unquote perfect toolpath, presupposing that that tool was ground perfectly and that it was set up and measured perfectly. We don't think that's the case, so we're going to edit, passes, stock to leave, and say leave 2007-inch axial and radial. We simulate that now. You can see we're staying off both left to right and top to bottom. Take a couple of passes and walk that tool in. Speeds and feeds are otherwise quite similar to a normal end mill or normal cutting tool, keeping in mind that your cut diameter varies from the outside of the pilot up to the outside of the cutting tool. Aluminum is quite forgiving, which is what we did in this case. Generally speaking, you're going to be able to use your maximum RPMs, and something like 1/1000th of an inch feed per tooth should get along just fine. Harvey has some really good resources. We'll come back to them in a second. If we take a look at their speeds and feeds worksheet, this looks a bit overwhelming, but what I really wanted to highlight here is this section here, which reads, depth of cut is shown as a full radial step over with multiple descending axial passes. So it's a little bit of a mouthful. All that they mean there is that if you're going to take multiple passes, do so in a decreasing amount. So this does not speak to any potential inaccuracies of the grind on the tool or setup or needing to walk it in, but rather, in this case, we just took one pass. We're assuming we can take the full cut. And for aluminum, the Tormach and the Haas had no problem doing that. If you're going to take multiple cuts, what they recommend would be something like choosing multiple depths, we'll say 0.02, where you'll see it now takes multiple step down. So it's the full left to right or width engagement, but each step down, you're taking more axially, except what they want you to do is take a little bit less with each depth of cut. With each depth of cut, you're actually engaging significantly more of the tool. So if you're familiar with, say, single point threading with a 60-degree insert, as you move that tool in, you're actually contacting more on each side of the tool, hence the decreasing steps. And you can do the same thing if you came in from the side, left to right. Keep it all in one axial depth, but come in progressively smaller on your widths of cut. When you're buying a corner rounder, keep in mind that that center point, which they call the pilot, is really important, because if you want to reach into a small hole or into a tight inside radius, you need a really small pilot. This is a pretty open feature, so no problem here. If these were to start to get smaller, you'll need a really small pilot diameter. Lastly, one of the coolest things that can help save your butt and kind of undo all the hassle I just went through is looking at flared corner rounding end mills. Flares add a little bit of forgiveness on each end of the tool to help blend that feature in, which is kind of funny because it's kind of the toolmaker's way of saying these could be a little bit tricky to measure or set up. But again, it's not necessarily the tool manufacturer's fault. Even if you have a part perfectly measured and a perfectly ground tool and perfectly set up, if you've got a foul variation in your workpiece, it may well give you problems or, again, a feature that you can catch your fingernail on, which is annoying. So flares, as you can see in this graphic here, at a 5-degree angle past the tangency point of each leading edge to help that blend line in. And I grabbed one of the Harvey tools here. They offer DXF files under the SIM files. I downloaded that DXF file, and you can see in Fusion here, that is, in this case, the 1/8 inch radius of the tool, but instead of having lines that extend tangentially directly off that radius, you've got a little bit of an extra lead in, lead out. We filmed these two different test pieces specifically for this video. One of them was on the Tormach 770, the other was on the Haas TM3P. And honestly, they both looked great. No demonstrable difference between the finish on the two. The one on the TM3 I thought was kind of a cool, almost like an Art Deco part. I think it was actually off of a camper that Ed had as a kid, or had gone camping with his family as a kid. And it's another good use case for what you can do with the corner rounders, which is they don't just have to be an alternative to a fillet. In this case, we're actually using them to create a full radius profile on the top of the part. And the alternative is to use surfacing toolpaths. Fusion does a great job. We could do either a scallop or a contour to create a surfacing toolpath with a ball nose end mill to run along that. And the time that this operation takes is very dependent on your scallop height or your step down, but nevertheless, you're looking at something like 16 to 34 minutes for a relatively normal step down versus under a minute for even a multi-pass operation with a corner rounder. Here, Ed didn't model the corner rounding in, but that's fine, no big deal. You're still choosing the same geometry line, and all we're doing under height is setting the bottom height to be the radius of that cutting tool. And this tool was 2 millimeters, so it should have been negative 0.0787. And you'll notice it's just a hair more. And that is what we had to dial in to get that blend just perfect. Once you do that, do yourself a favor and write that on a piece of paper with that specific piece of carbide, and it should repeat for you. The other thing that we did was we tested the difference between 1/1000th of an inch feed per tooth on this top profile and 2/1000ths of an inch on the bottom. And you should see a difference because feed per tooth is simply your feed forward line. How far is the cutter progressing with every rotation? So the further that distance is, the more of a scallop or scoop effect there should be in your part. We'll try to show this on camera here, but we couldn't see a real difference. And that can be a real time saver because you're able to literally double your feed rate or cut your cutting time in half. Hope you folks learned something. Hope you enjoy. Take care. See you soon.